again, folks. It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about the things I'm looking forward to with the NY6 Bowl games coming up, and to discuss those, I want to talk with one of my buddies, sports director at KJRH, Caden McFarland, and a massive ND fan. Caden, how you doing, man?
RJ, I'm great. We made it, right? We are playing bowl games in the year of our Lord 2020 with COVID and everything else. So we had Oklahoma State yesterday, OU tonight, TU tomorrow, and as you said, my Notre Dame Fighting Irish on Friday. And all of that happened where I am here in Texas. So it's a beautiful thing. I'm fired up, man.
Well, I mean, and to that end, right, covering this team like you have, I saw you did an interview with head coach at Tulsa, Philip Montgomery. What'd you learn, and what am I going to see tonight on the news?
Well, we'll have a little one-on-one with Philip coming up tonight at 10. I appreciate that. Appreciate the plug opportunity. I just finished talking to some OU tailgaters.
Okay.
Taking an old Moore, Oklahoma school bus and turned it into something they call the Beast, and it's got AstroTurf and seating and Sooner seats everywhere, and it's got all the national championships listed and the Heisman Trophy winners, everything else. So you'll see that at 6 o'clock.
All right.
They keep me busy, and then we'll talk about the bowl game a little bit as well. So, I'm staying busy. With regard to Philip Montgomery, look, these guys are sky high, man. It's been 4 years since they were able to play in a bowl game. Almost nobody in the program has experienced a bowl game win, and forget the records. If they're able to bring home a victory over an SEC team to cap off what would be only the second season of 2 losses or less in the last 37 years for Tulsa football, if they're able to finish that way, you wouldn't be able to contain the excitement in that locker room. We've seen Philip Montgomery dance after victories, and I think it'll be an epic dance. So they've got maybe the best defensive player in the country, Zaven Collins, who won't be on the field, and so they've got to find some answers there. But they have good defensive players everywhere. They were really good in the second half defensively against Navy when Zaven was unable to go. So I don't think they're too worried about it. They don't seem too worried about the rain that could be coming, from kickoff all the way through the finish of this thing. So they're just pumped. Are they good enough? Man for man, do they have the athletes to hang with Mississippi State? I mean, this will be interesting, right? The SEC is a different animal. I've covered, I think, 9 different SEC teams in my time in Oklahoma in bowl games. And I think our teams have only won twice. The big OU upset in the Sugar Bowl over Alabama a few years ago, and then OU putting a knot on it, really just a pretty average Auburn team's head in the Sugar Bowl 4 years ago. So generally, those athletes get the better of ours. But, man, if TU's able to cap off this season with the win over an SEC team, Mike Leach coached SEC team, none of us saw that coming. Let's put it that way.
No, and you're on it, right? It's an SEC team, but my favorite memory of Joe Gillespie is still a couple years ago, press conference. I need a couple guys that can line up in a 4'9". We're going to play man on the outside. Every once in a while, we're going to drop back in the zone, and I'm going to tell my big guys, hey, just stay in front of them. And that seems to be what the formula has been all year, and I've been really excited to see them, particularly at secondary. Zaven has been great for years, as you well know, but damn it, man. The Nagurski Award. And, like you mentioned, one of maybe the best player in the country. Well, hell, the Butkus Award goes to an ND linebacker, who I want to discuss here in a little bit. But OU and Florida is become the least anticipated Cotton Bowl of my life. Now, I've only been on this earth since 1987, right? Yet, I know, right? I was really looking forward to this when it first got matched up, and then I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. These guys aren't going to play. And then dude after dude after dude, and then earlier today, Dan Mullen said they're going to be without their leading tackler and a couple of guys on defense. So they're without Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, Jacob Copeland, Trayvon Grimes. And they're going to try to go and beat up on Oklahoma, and I don't see it happening. And yet, I'm going to watch every minute of it.
Well, they still have Kyle Trask. And so the question is, this was without question going to be the best offense this Oklahoma defense had seen all year long. And the dirty little secret about the Big 12 right now is that the offenses just aren't that good and the quarterbacks aren't that good. And so OU, because the best offense is theirs and the best quarterback, in my opinion, is theirs as well. The only 2 teams they faced all year long that were even in the top 60 in offense, according to the SP Plus, that at least as of a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple of them have jumped in there now, was Texas and Iowa State. OU did a nice job against both of those teams in all three of those games. Iowa State scored, 37 in the first meeting in Ames, but there was a long kick return that factored in there, held them to 21 in the Big 12 championship game. Texas was 31 in regulation, and really, it was 17 with only 4 or 5 minutes left. For the most part, against the two best offenses they faced, the OU defense came up big, but this was going to be a different animal. It still might be the best offense, even without 4 of his top 5 receivers, simply because Kyle Trask is out there. And he is at an accuracy level that Sam Ehlinger can't match, that Brock Purdy can't match. Nobody in the Big 12 right now. They're going against a guy who's a surgeon in much the way Spencer Rattler is. So I'll be interested to see, with the Florida offensive line that, I expect to be as good as OU has faced, and a quarterback who's better than they've faced, and probably some kids who, while inexperienced, at least talent-wise, are, probably what you want, whoever these backups Florida's going to be running out there. And then against Dan Mullen's scheme as well, this might still be the best offense OU's defense has faced. I think Florida gets into the 24, 27 point range. I would be surprised if it was more than that, just because OU's defense, I don't think they are elite. Like they're going to go be the best unit for a national championship team. I don't think they're there yet, but I think they're good. I think they're good. And so I think they'll play well tonight. I think they'll hold Florida under 30, and I don't think Florida can hold OU under 30. And so I think the Sooners win this thing, and it's really just a matter of by how much. If not, we have some real reassessments to make with regard to the Big 12 Conference in 2020, the Oklahoma Sooners in 2020, and then also going forward. Can you really, even with Spencer Rattler coming back and even with, a lot of talent coming back offensively and then probably defensively as well, can we really make a case for the Sooners as, let's say, a top 3 true national championship contender in 2021 if they're not able to beat a shorthanded Florida team tonight? So is there a ton at stake? Is this anything like being in the college football playoff? Absolutely not. But it's still a pretty darn important game for Oklahoma to go win, in my opinion. Some people would say, you have nothing to gain from a situation like this where Florida's shorthanded, and I just disagree. It's not the same as beating Alabama in the college football playoff, but a win over Florida in the Cotton Bowl, that's still going to look good. 9 months from now and 9 years from now.
Caden, are you familiar with what I call the Texas bounce?
I'm just going to venture a guess.
Yeah, go for it.
It has to do with probably an up and down, mostly forgettable regular season that ends with a bowl game performance that is unlike anything they did in September, October, November, and then it makes us all somehow believe the hype by the time the preseason magazines are printed sometime next summer, and they end up in the top 10 yet again, somehow, some way.
See, this is why I love talking ball with Caden, because he's on it, man. I think that Oklahoma can, for once, benefit from the Texas bounce, all right? If they could go get, 14, 20-point win against this Florida team, all people are going to remember is the ranking. You and I are going to remember they showed up with the JV squad, right? We're going to remember that. Yeah. But nobody else is. The same thing happens with Texas every year. It's like, they were 6-3 going into this game against Colorado. Now, as much as I really enjoy Colorado, shout out to you and
slopes.
What I was about to say, and your delicious assortment of weed. No, man, you beat up on Colorado. I love seeing Casey Thompson go out there and make it happen. 8-10, 170 yards, 4 TDs. Beautiful. Bijan Robinson turns out to be what I thought he would be, right? Average 18.8 yards per carry. And then in high school, he averages 17.7 yards per touch, which is filthy, right? But they're going to be a top 15, top 10 team next year because of this game, right? And I'm thinking, especially with what you just laid out in front of us, which makes this a referendum on the Big 12. This is the Big 12 champ versus the SEC champion runner-up, right? This is what you want to see. You need to go beat this team. It can't be close, and you damn sure can't lose. especially since yours truly has said next year's the year for Oklahoma. Like the window's open again. It hadn't been this open since 2017. Mm-hmm. And if they get to return as many of these guys as seniors and redshirt seniors as I think they will, it can be a whole hell of a lot of fun. And I'm already expecting 21 to be just the best year for us in sports, particularly because, everything from baseball happening on time to the Summer Olympics into what I hope is one of the most fulfilling college football seasons we have in some time. But I'll ask this, and then I want to get into a couple of the playoff games. Would you have expected Kyle Trask to be dueling against Spencer Rattler in 2020? Because I sure as hell didn't. I was thinking in a normal year, if this team caught 4 losses, it would not have shocked me. And I was getting all sorts of hell on this channel for saying so. Now that we're kind of sort of there, and we get to see this, did you expect to see it?
Well, certainly in September, I don't think I did. I thought for sure this looked like a team that was going to catch another loss somewhere along the way. And tip of the cap to Lincoln Riley for keeping this train on the track, if you will. Look, Rattler is that good, and they caught some breaks. I think they caught Oklahoma State on what was absolutely their worst night of the season.
So what the scoreboard says.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the Texas game, I came out of that saying those are 2 football teams that are no good at all. And I look back and I sort of lament that's where I was. That's the headspace I was living in, because that has become, it appears, such a turning point for Spencer Rattler and for this team. The way he handled the benching, for a quarter and a half or whatever it was, simply couldn't have been better. And the fact that I think he had thrown 5 interceptions by the time he was benched in that ball game and has only thrown 2 since. We've seen a different quarterback. Lincoln Riley said his finest game was in the Big 12 championship, 10 days ago or whatever that was. And the numbers wouldn't say that's the case, but certainly the command would. He's a guy who feels far more reliable, far less prone to make mistakes, and the talent is just it's unreal. I couldn't count 5 guys that I've seen play college football with a more talented arm, probably in the 13 or 14 years I've been covering it in Tulsa. So that game it turned out to be just incredibly important and monumental. And, I walked away from Dallas that day saying neither one of these teams is doing anything in 2020. Neither one's going anywhere fast. And frankly, I don't know, spinning it forward, going into the future, what to make of the Sooners. They were a team that collapsed late against everybody. They still have some issues with regard to offensive production after the first 3 or 4 drives of a game. It's not a perfect team by any means. There is more reason to question some of what Lincoln Riley's going for as a play caller this year than there has been any other year. But as you mentioned, there's also more reason for optimism going forward about having a complete team that is actually able to compete for a national title, not just make the playoff and get your doors blown off by an SEC power, but actually get there and hang with people. They're beginning to round into form that way. And some of the guys you've seen play more and more in the secondary with far more length, Washington and Graham, just guys who look the part. I didn't think we were going to be here. I did not think that Oklahoma was going to be able to be the favorite against a top 10 SEC team with a chance to finish off a 2-loss season and really have the look of a top 3 or 4 preseason team in 2021. I definitely didn't think for most of the fall that's where this thing was heading. But that's where we are, and it's one of – look, everybody points to Lincoln Riley as the offensive wonderkind, the play caller who's just a step or 2 ahead of the entire world. But he's shown something in the way he's been able to keep this team together through some real adversity. To have Kennedy Brooks opt out, after you've lost Trey Sermon to that school up north, and to have some of the injuries they had to deal with, and then the suspension silliness with Ronnie Perkins and now even into this ball game where Jaden Hazelwood, I guess, has decided he's opting out for this one game. But I think the thinking is he will be back in 2021. There's just been some funny stuff going down, and he's been able to manage it in a way that's pretty heady, especially for a head coach of his age. So this has been a fine coaching job. Certainly not his best team, but next year might be.
You mentioned the fine coaching job, and I'm looking at Brian Kelly in that way because this was a big season for him, regardless of whether or not, it was Corona laden or not, because you and I were joking about that game on November 7th and what it's going to mean. And then to get a double overtime win against the number one team in the country, do you, one, feel that was too much for them going in the ACC championship game with all of us talking about, man, there were 3 starters missing from the front 7, and they were playing without Trevor Lawrence. Even as I say that DJ Uiagalelei is a more talented quarterback than Trevor Lawrence, he's not their leader. But you also have shown tremendous backbone with this defense. Like, yes, talk my ear off about Kyle Hamilton, but Jeremiah Owusu-Kamara has been outstanding, and to watch him come downhill is a thing. Like, I love watching the Woo Assassin go after people because he's got one gear, and as soon as he pulls the trigger, you're probably going to hate this, but I saw Kenneth Murray, just the way that he pull a string, and once that dude flares out, he's a dead man, right? What have you been surprised about, and if anything, what are you confident about going in against Alabama in this game?
Confident about.
Not pessimistic, confident.
Yeah. I think that because Mac Jones is not the threat to run the ball that Trevor Lawrence is and was in that ACC championship game, that the Notre Dame defense, you mentioned Owusu-Koramoah and Kyle Hamilton, and those are the 2 dudes. Those are the guys on that Notre Dame defensive starting unit that are SEC title contender good and play with that speed. They'll be able to pin their ears back, trust their eyes, and try to get after Alabama in a way that they just could not in the ACC championship game against Clemson, but they were able to in that early November game against Clemson. Now, that's going to invite some pretty troubling things on the back end where Notre Dame is just average at corner. And so it is hard for me to imagine Alabama not coming up, not hitting on big plays in much the same way Clemson did. And, I hate the matchup for Notre Dame in this year. Now, here's an interesting thing, and I don't know the answer to it. I would pose this question to you. You've seen Ian Book's work this year, probably have a fair amount of respect for it, as do I. And you've seen Trevor Lawrence through 3 spectacular years at Clemson, and then some of his most spectacular work, I think, happened in that ACC championship game, at least if you think Notre Dame is truly a top 10, 12 defense. If they had traded quarterbacks on that day, if Trevor Lawrence was the starting quarterback for Notre Dame and Ian Book was the starting quarterback for Clemson, how does that ball game play out? I don't think it's anything close to 34-10. I'm not saying Notre Dame wins, but I'm just saying this Notre Dame team, because of that blowout, is having the same old stuff thrown at them, that same old narrative that you're just not there with the big boys. And while I will absolutely admit that is the case with regard to Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State, they have more talent than Notre Dame does, no doubt, full stop. I do think Notre Dame is much closer than it was in 2012, where if Notre Dame had traded quarterbacks with Alabama on that day, there would have been no difference in the score. Everett Golson could throw it. Alabama might win by more. Notre Dame needs to get elite at that position. And what they're going about, the way they're trying to do this, heavy tight end sets, big offensive linemen, I think can actually be a thorn in the side of some of those guys at the very top. Not year in, year out, but every 3rd or 4th year when they have a special team. And assuming they can elevate the quarterback play to you can get your own Trevor Lawrence. You can get your own Deshaun Watson. With somebody like that, I think this particular Notre Dame team would have the pieces in place to maybe take down an Alabama under the right situation. And certainly take down a Clemson or an Ohio State. To me, that's what's next for them. They're building this thing in the right way. Think Stanford when they had Andrew Luck and how they could be a thorn in the side for some of those high-octane offenses at either Oregon or USC. That's it. Shorten the game, ball control. These are things that Notre Dame is going to try to do against Alabama, and I'm just not sure they're going to have the quarterback who's good enough taking deep shots to actually make Alabama pay for it, and have this thing play out the way they want it to. But if you put, let's say, Andrew Luck back there, and granted, Andrew Luck doesn't come out of high school every year, but if you have that kind of quarterback back there for Notre Dame, I think they are a real threat to the Alabamas, Clemsons, and Ohio States. Without it, I just don't see how they match up. I just don't see it. The spread is 20 points. I'm the biggest Notre Dame fan, and if my mortgage was on the line, I would take Bama in this ball game. That's just how bad the matchup is at the moment, because they've got a bit of a pop gun offense that is good enough to handle anybody and everybody else. But when they go against those teams who recruit 4- and 5-star kids everywhere, they just don't have enough talent.
Well, to that end, right, I think that Ian Book is actually a better quarterback than it feels like you're making him out to be. I just think he's matched with the wrong system. I love this dude.
Yeah, you might be right.
And I think, I think that if you thought of Ian Book as having more Kyler Murray in him than, say, Landry Jones, it would make a lot more sense, because every time that dude is rolling to one side or the other, I trust him and I love what I see. But when you want to have him back there just going through his progressions, or even just reading one side of the field and then just dumping it off to the other, that's not what he does, especially with the personnel you have. The personnel that you described with Stanford fits, but he ain't that kind of guy. He needs to be able to move around. He needs you to have dudes out in all sorts of short routes, talking about drag concepts, mesh, things that allow you to take advantage of man-to-man, and things that allow for big open windows against coverage, whether it's cover 2 or cover 4. You need to be able to do that with him. In that way, kind of sounds like Sam Ehlinger, right? But I did want to talk a little bit about Ohio State Clemson as well, but I wanted to put this on you. This 2017 Alabama team or 2017 Alabama recruiting class might be the best that has ever existed, and you get to face that, right? Because, no, seriously, this is the way that I try to put this in perspective. Mac Jones and Tua are both probably going to end up first-round draft picks, and they were 2 quarterbacks in the same class. That never happens. Judy, Ruggs, Smith, never happens. Najee's at the top of that. And if anything, I was thinking Najee's never going to live up to this reputation, and yet here he is doing exactly that. So Ohio State Clemson, Justin Fields versus Trevor Lawrence is the headline, but Amari Rodgers had a really great quote yesterday, just a little bit of fodder. He was asked, does he think Ohio State Clemson is a rivalry, with the two teams having met as often as they have the last 8 years? He said, not to us. I think they make it into a rivalry. And a lot of that stems from, Dabo Swinney and his ranking Ohio State number 11, saying as to why. Also saying, look, I've never lost to Ohio State. So, by all means, put them up there. What do you think? Do you think this game becomes a grudge match for Ohio State? Do you think it even matters? Does Clemson just outclass them?
Oh, I don't think Clemson outclasses them. And that actually puts a finer point on something I was getting at, but it kind of failed to mention. I really should compare Notre Dame and Ohio State, or Notre Dame to Ohio State and Clemson, with regard to how close they are, right, assuming they can get elite quarterback play. Alabama's on a different planet.
Sure.
And so under no circumstances do I think if Notre Dame and Alabama traded quarterbacks on Friday would it make any difference at all. So all that to say, Clemson and Ohio State, to me, are very close. Ohio State hasn't been able to play a full season. They haven't been tested by great teams. I think that if they had been, we would have seen a better version of that team. They are not what they were last year, but they could have been on more equal footing 1 year ago. And in fact, despite, Clemson coming out the victor in that ball game, I'm not sure they were the better team. So to me, look, I give Dabo, and I guess Amari as well, I give them props for being willing to say these things, because to me, they're saying it about somebody that's awfully close to an equal. Clemson's won the 2 national titles since Ohio State won their last one. So I understand. They've been so great in big games. Dabo's got some sort of secret sauce, because he sort of got the aw shucks thing. It's been hard. I've doubted him almost every step of the way until I just couldn't possibly anymore. There is no denying that Dabo Swinney is a great big game coach. And I give the guy credit for putting his money where his mouth is and having the guts to know. He knew weeks ago that they were probably going to beat Notre Dame, and there's no way they were going to get a rematch with Notre Dame in the playoffs. So he knew we're going to take on Ohio State. And instead of doing the thing you would do if you wanted to avoid bulletin board material and simply voting Ohio State as high as everybody else and saying great things about them, I think he gave us his version of the truth. He thinks that getting to the starting line 11 or 12 times in this COVID season, when the kids are being tested 3 times a week and they don't get to see their families and everything else we've talked about, is just so much more difficult than it is 6 or 7 games. People can disagree on that. People can disagree on whether or not Ohio State belongs in the playoff. But I give Dabo credit for standing on principle in a way that I don't think anybody else did. I don't think anybody else voted those guys, held them outside the top 10. So he took a stand against a team that he knows he's going to be facing. And to me, that takes some stones. So I take my hat off to him. I do think Ohio State absolutely will play with as much motivation as could possibly be summoned because of this. I mean, that's not a bear anybody else in the country probably has the cojones to poke. But I think because Clemson has had so much success in big games, they probably feel a little bit invincible. And probably because they have, the number 1 pick in next year's NFL draft. And for that reason, I will pick Clemson, but I will not be a bit surprised if Ohio State plays by far its best game of the year and finds a way to win this thing. Just wouldn't surprise me at all, because I think we simply haven't seen the real Ohio State yet this year. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe they have given us everything we need to know about them in the 6 or 7 games they've played so far. But I just have this hunch that this will be the best they've played, and Clemson's going to need to be really, really good to come out with the win.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited. Only game that I think I'm as excited for is actually just Georgia-Cincy, and I want to finish with that before I let you go. You saw a lot of Cincy. You saw a lot of Tulsa. You've got feelings about Cincy. I've got feelings about Cincy. But I also remember the last 2 teams to play in a group, the Peach Bowl, as Group of 5 participants, Houston and Central Florida, got W's. You've had opt-outs with Georgia. You have an outstanding defense for Cincinnati. Desmond Ridder seems to be able to do almost anything. Who do you think wins, and what do you think it says about the American if Cincy can win?
Boy, that's a great question. I think that the American – I don't think it's going to change my opinion on American football one bit. I think it is clearly a cut above all the other Group of 5 conferences. I think it's in a really good place with regard to some of the coaches' salaries, to be able to keep Luke Fickell as long as Cincinnati has. He's not leaving that job unless it's something fantastic among the Power 5. You don't leave that job for Purdue or whatever. What Houston's paying Dana Holgerson, and you could go down the list, Memphis, and their commitment to winning. And SMU's got a lot of good things going on, and I think a formula that can work for them as long as Dykes is there. Look, it's a league that has a lot of really good teams, and it's not that far off from the teams at the bottom of the Power 5. But do I feel good about putting an American team in a 4-team playoff? I just don't, and I don't think that's going to change with the Cincinnati win over Georgia. And it sucks because it's unfair. And I acknowledge that it's unfair, but as long as we have a 4-team playoff, this is where we're going to end up. The playoff committee is given an impossible task. Pick the 4 best teams among 130. Most of them don't see each other year in, year out. You have 5 conference champions, and then in other years, potentially Notre Dame as well. As long as we have 4, they're going to be left out. They just are. And I have a hard time making a case against it because they haven't played the schedule that, the 4th team this year is Notre Dame. They didn't play the schedule Notre Dame played. Those guys played Clemson twice. I can't sit here and tell you that I think Cincinnati would have split with Clemson this year, regardless of who Clemson trotted out at quarterback. I don't think that's the case. It's interesting to me. I think maybe in the SP Plus, Cincinnati did finish ahead of Notre Dame. That's interesting. It's a little bit eye-opening to me. It's something I would keep tabs on, if you will. Maybe they are that good. But gosh, I cover Tulsa. I love that team. I love what they've done this year, but I'm also aware of some of the flaws. And for them to go up to Cincinnati and play them as close as they did, and Cincy needing a last-second field goal to win that thing, that didn't help with regard to my, I love what Cincinnati's done. I love what they're doing. I think they're a complete team. I think Fickell's a great coach. But are they in that, do they live in that world, in that neighborhood with the top 4 or 5 teams in the country? I just don't think they do. And for that reason, I always go with the most talented team. Even if UCF has beaten an Auburn or UCF has beaten a Baylor, I go with the team that is most talented, and especially with JT Daniels, ready to go. I would have to take Georgia in that ball game. And I think going forward, 2021, this game matters to Georgia more than, let's say tonight's OU Florida ball game probably matters to Florida because of all the opt-outs
or even A&M in North Carolina. Yeah. And Kyle Trask leaving next year. I think Georgia's got a chance to really build some nice momentum. And the folks there won't be happy until they win a national title. And so this is a big ball game for them. I can't pick against them in this spot and for those reasons. But I'll certainly be rooting against Georgia in the ball game. And look, I don't know how much time we have left, but I don't know that you and I have ever had a full-out argument about the playoff and where it should go. But, just to let you know, I was a traditionalist back in the day. I love the fact, people would say it's the best regular season in sports. And I think that kind of got misconstrued. The regular season is still really important in college football. But it was the most unique and quirky regular season in sports because the biggest games of the year were not played at the end in a playoff. They were played on campuses across the country, maybe in September, maybe October, maybe November. Our games of the century, like a Notre Dame, Florida State, or an Oklahoma, Nebraska in 1971. It was just a quirky sport with a quirky season. And we didn't always pick the best team. We didn't get the best team necessarily crowned national champion, but you had to have kind of a magical quality to your season. You just had to fight. It wasn't that you were the very best come December or January. It was that you were the team that was able to avoid any sort of pitfall, and win your clunkers and everything. It was just a different kind of season. Well, that's out the gate. Whether it's a 2-team playoff, a 4-team playoff, an 8-team playoff, that's off the board now. And so what am I fighting against? I am now very much for an expanded playoff. 8, 12, 16, we could talk about it. I'm for all of it. All of it's better than 4 because the group of 5 is left out. And with 5 power conferences and only 4 spots, it just gets silly every year. And so I am all for expanding it now because I think the cat's out of the bag. There's no getting it back in. The bowl games will never have the importance they did. The regular season will never be as quirky as it was. So it's time to expand that playoff in my mind, absolutely. Hey, buddy, my T-shirt on right now says expand the playoff, you cowards, because
there you go.
That's where I'm at. But to your point about the most unique regular season, I've hit at people who wanted to tell me that, but they haven't given me the argument that you have, because I would say, I don't want to see Alabama play Western Carolina. I don't care. I don't want to see Alabama play the Citadel. I don't care. What I do care about, though, is 1966. Your Notre Dame Fighting Irish are playing against Michigan State. Both are 10-0. Do you remember what happened in that game?
I do.
Please, enlighten the people.
Notre Dame was down to its backup quarterback who was a type 1 diabetic. Eric Parsegian knew that he was probably going to come out on top in the polls if he could just pull off a tie. And so he ran into the line for the final couple minutes of the game and punted, I believe, and basically played for the tie. And it finished 10-10, and they won the national title because they beat USC 51-0 the very next week. So,
but Alabama goes 11-0 in that same year.
Yes. With an all-white team,
right? And that was the big sticking point, right? Most of the voters are north of the Mason-Dixon line. Now, I'm usually the person that brings race into an argument, but even this right here, where you have a team that played for the tie, that I can just focus on that. I don't even need to talk about Alabama. Why do we have a sport where you can win a national championship, by tying. Like, I hate that, especially as you and I cover high school football. We cover high school playoffs. They go for 2 and 3 months in Texas. They have a 24-team playoff in the FCS. We know North Dakota State's going to be there at the end. We know James Madison's going to be there at the end. We know that San Diego's going to win the Pioneer League, and they're going to get railroaded in the second round of the playoffs. We still enjoy it, and it doesn't take away from them playing 10, 11, 12 games. Matter of fact, Grambling continues to pull itself out of the FCS so that they can play the Bayou Classic when they qualify. Right? You can make these decisions individually. But that's where I look at it. If we can have years like 1966, and we can have years like Steve Young and BYU in 1984, where you beat a 6-5 Michigan team when you let you claim a national championship, I got a problem with that. I can't. Now, I'm also raised in the 90s. I'm raised in the aughts. I've seen the BCS. I've seen the last portion of the Bowl Coalition, Bowl Alliance. And now I'm in the playoff, and I hate it. And all I get is older folks who, for a time, would tell me, no, RJ, this is best. And now I'm glad to hear many folks that have been watching the sport longer than I have are coming around to this thinking that, no, this is farcical. We're making our sport silly. And in that way, I'm happy because I want smarter college football fans. I want a smarter college football product. And I know because you are one of the smartest connoisseurs of college football that I've ever met, you want the same, and that makes me feel good. This is Caden McFarland. Follow him on Twitter at Caden MC. That is CAYDEN MC. He is the sports director at KJRH here in Tulsa, and my favorite sports anchor. Caden, thanks so much, brother.
RJ, it's an honor and a pleasure, my friend. Good talking to you. Love talking college football with you. Anytime.
All right, brother. I'll call you later.
All right.
That was awesome. Give Caden a follow. He's always dropping notes that are, well, the kind of caliber that national sports talk show hosts would salivate over. The man has tremendous chops. He manages to put a day of sports inside of 2 and 3 minute segments on TV. I take like 8 minutes to get to a point, but I'm also much more of a sports talk show host. All right. Now that we have had our guest, let's talk a little bit about, well, what you want to talk about, and also get into a little bit of what I want to talk about, which is why let's talk about 10 things to watch in the NY6 Bowls is kind of a placeholder headline, because I just want to see what the conversation was like. Been having a lot of guests come through, and I don't always get to talk about what you want to talk about in the live stream, though I see the live stream. So let's, man, RJ, look at the other way or some. Looking for questions. If you got a question, drop it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm probably going to go off on a tangent. But while I'm waiting on questions to get dropped in the chat, many of you know that I have been reading a biography of Nick Saban. It is called The Making of a Coach, Saban, The Making of a Coach, by Monty Burke. It is excellent. Like, if it was about a political figure, we'd probably be talking about this as a Pulitzer Prize winning book because it is that well reported. But I'm going to give you guys a story that I read in here that is about Nick Saban's first year with the Miami Dolphins. And my goodness, this is a doozy. All right. At the Miami Dolphins annual rookie talent show, Matt Roth and Channing Crowder, the second and third round picks respectively that year, decided to team up for their act. Instead of trying to sing or dance or tell jokes, they opted to go with a thing a bit bolder. With the coaches, players, and staff gathered in an auditorium at the Dolphins headquarters, Crowder called rookie head coach Nick Saban to the stage, which had as a prop a single chair. I looked out into the crowd and said, "Hey, coach, we just appreciate you giving us a chance to play in the NFL, and we want to show you some love," says Crowder. With that, he pointed to the chair and invited Saban to sit down. Somewhat reluctantly, he obliged. He sat facing Crowder and Roth. At that moment, KJ Harris, an undrafted free agent who had been signed by the team, was supposed to start playing some loud club music over the speakers, but couldn't figure out how to get the CD player to work. The surprise that Crowder and Roth had in store for Saban didn't wait for her cue, however. From behind him, a stripper dressed in high heels, a very small bikini, and a Jason Taylor Dolphins jersey pranced out of a door and onto the stage. She touched Saban's back. He flinched. When she walked around to face Saban, he shot straight up in the chair. Harris still couldn't figure out how to get the music working. The auditorium was instead filled with shouts and catcalls coming from the seats. The stripper moved in front of Saban and began to dance provocatively. He sat completely still for one more moment, then abruptly stood up, walked off the stage, and hustled up the stairs. The room went silent. There were like 30 stairs, says Crowder. All you could hear was the click, click, click of his shoes, then the door creaking open, and then boom, when he shut it behind him. The room exploded into delirious peals of laughter. It was pretty immature on our part to include Saban in that skit, says Crowder. But that's why we did it. Yo, man, they put a stripper out in front of Nick Saban and didn't tell him about it. Yo, I can only imagine how that must have felt. But it's also indicative of his experience as the head coach of Miami Dolphins. Just some fascinating and really great stories in there. Let's see. Cole Powers ask, opinion on Coastal Carolina coach Jamie Chadwell winning Coach of the Year. I give it to him. It's either him or Nick Saban, right? Or, I mean, you can make an argument for Luke Fickell, but Jamie Chadwell putting together the season that they did, that game that they scheduled at BYU just a couple of days out, getting a win against an undefeated BYU that we were talking about having a claim to a national championship or even a claim to the college football playoff before losing that game. Huge, right? They get to 11-0. They win a share of the Sun Belt title. We would have loved to see Louisiana play against them in a Sun Belt championship, but they share the title according to league rules. Play an overtime game against Liberty that they lose 37-34 on a blocked field goal. Liberty gets to 10 wins. Outstanding season for the Chanticleers. You know their name. We know it's in Conway, South Carolina. They were the last undefeated team in South Carolina. When you take into account Clemson is in South Carolina, that's a big deal. I'm amazed by that, and I'm really excited for the Chants and what they have going for themselves. I enjoy Sun Belt football. I think it is an extremely entertaining brand of football, just like the American. And this is another reason why I want to see the playoff expanded. I want to see those teams showcased. Not that they'll win a national championship, but somebody will. But not that you're going to see it often. I still think it's a very cool thing, and I'm happy for Chadwell. I'm happy for the Chants. Let's see. This dude says a stripper. Let's see. What else we got here? Do you still think Fields is better than Lawrence? Yes. Yes, I do. I think Justin Fields is also going to be the better pro than Trevor Lawrence. That's me. Let me see. Notre Dame game should tell you all about Trevor. I mean, Notre Dame's a good football team. They ain't Ohio State. Like, to put it mildly, last year they needed a late interception to beat Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl and then got railroaded by LSU. This year, the game, it should tell you a lot that it's only 7.5. Clemson's favored by 7.5, right? And that's mostly because of how Ohio State looked against Northwestern. If you think that they're going to come out with the same sort of game plan and be able to succeed, you're wrong, right? You also didn't have Chris Olave in that game. Trey Sermon has one hell of a game, 331 yards on the ground for the Buckeyes' single-game rushing record. I think it's going to be entertaining. I'm here to watch it. I want to see those two dudes duel, and I'm excited to see both of them. But also, I think it's a taste test, right? Just because I like Justin Fields better than I like Trevor Lawrence doesn't mean that Trevor Lawrence is bad. Like, they're the two best players in college football, right? Like, this is a Heisman year for Devontae Smith, and I get that. Najee Harris has been great, and Mac Jones has been great. But if we're going to pick one dude, I could go with either one of those, and I'd be fine with it. Let's see. Okay, Miranda. You get to go. Bye. Goodness me. Fields needs to get one more year. Forget you played only 19 games. Yeah, no, I mean, like, when I talked to Quincy Avery for a piece I wrote about Justin Fields earlier this year, he said the reason that it was big for him is because there is a direct correlation between the number of games that you play as a quarterback in college to how successful you are in the NFL. And on that front, Trevor Lawrence hasn't beat, right? And that would be a good reason to draft Trevor Lawrence ahead of Justin Fields if that's what you wanted to do. I would be on board with that. I understand. Let's see. RJ, how about the competition between the two O-lines, Alabama and Notre Dame, Landon Dickerson being out for Alabama might end up being a big deal, but that team seems to feel very comfortable with Chris Owens being the starting center for them. We're also well aware that Notre Dame is something of an OLU, not unlike Alabama. I think they also both boast really great backs. Kyron Williams is really good. Najee Harris is really good. The difference, I think, normally would be between the tight ends, but that's not really that big of an edge. Although Alabama's got a tight end that returns kicks, guys. Like Jaleel Billingsley returns kicks and plays tight end. What? To go along with Miller Forrestall, who's actually the starter. What? And then they got Halloween out there and Michael Mayer, for Notre Dame, to say nothing of Ben Skronerick. Like, they got dudes too. The difference is going to be on the back end, and if Ian Book can throw the ball the way that Kyle Trask was able to throw the ball, it could be a lot more fun. That said, there's a reason why the spread is 20 points, and Vegas had its best month ever in November betting against us, and they set the line. Probably going to be Alabama in a rout. Let's see. What else we got in here? Do you think Caleb Williams is willing to sit behind Spencer? Yes. Do you think Caleb will take his spot and Spencer will transfer? No. We done? Let's see. Dude says Sooners 56, Florida 21 over the Gators tonight. That's bold. I wouldn't make it that big a margin, but I would say it's going to be a margin. Alabama's offense carries them. To some degree, I see why you say that, but Will Anderson has been ridiculously awesome these last 2-3 games, guys. Like, he's been just a monster on the edge. And Christian Harris is coming along in a very big way. Patrick Surtain's going to get beat because he plays corner. Like, that's part of it. You better pick on Jordan Battle, though. That's where you better go. If you try to go at Malachi Moore or Brian Branch, you're liable to get done up. I think that it's going to be really fun to see Josh Jobe, because I think Jobe's going to get picked on the most because people aren't going to want to throw at Patrick Surtain all that much. Let's see. How do you feel about the committee possibly pushing the college football playoff days if a team catches a mass outbreak? They have to. They better. Like, there's a lot of money on these games. That's why they're being played. You gotta do that. Like, there is no integrity of the sport in this. There's only making money. ESPN pays about $608 million per game of the college football playoff for all three. Like, that's ridiculous. Yes, of course, you're going to have to push that back. There's $1 billion riding on this. Come on. Do you think... Okay, this dude just took away his question. What else are we looking for? Did I miss the part where Tony Elliott is out? Probably. Let's see. That might have happened before I ended up checking. Clemson Tigers offensive coordinator Tony Elliott to miss the college football playoff semifinal game. Did he test positive? Yes, he did. Okay. I don't know that Brandon Streeter, quarterback's coach at Clemson, is going to call plays because the last time that needed to happen, Dabo Swinney picked up the play sheet and he did just fine. Like, I think that happened when Chad Morris decided he was going to take a job at SMU at the time. Now, Dabo will pick up the sheet. Dabo will call the plays, and it'll be fine. But when his availability is tomorrow morning, I'll be sure to check in, and we'll see what he has to say about that. But I don't think that it's going to be that big a deal because even when Dabo called the plays, right, and it was, I think Trevor Lawrence was still playing quarterback, but at one point. No, it wasn't. Couldn't have been because Chad left. But anyway, it was a great game, and Dabo's holding the play card, and he's being interviewed after the game, and said, hell of a game by the quarterback, and he said, hell of a game by the play caller too, wouldn't you say? Like, that dude, he understands football. He can't wait to pick up the play card. He doesn't because he wants to empower his coordinators. He wants to let them do their jobs and let them run the team so he can be the CEO of the team. Nah, I'm with it. Like, I don't think it's really going to be that big a deal. And if it was a different quarterback, maybe. But since Trevor Lawrence knows the system inside and out, and he's a coach on the field, and he only reads one half of the field at a time, You can run what you want to run. It's going to be fine. You got Travis Etienne back there, which is the same as having War Emblem, right? Or Alidar or American Pharaoh. You're fine. I don't really think it's as big a deal as you guys are making it out to be. Poor ND is going to get... Okay. All right. Enough. Because even with you blotting out the letter there, dog, we can't have that. Stop that. Like, that whole sentiment is out of pocket. I'm putting you in timeout. See. What are your thoughts about the secondary for Ohio State versus the Clemson wide receiver core? I think that's why they're favored. I think Clemson is favored over Ohio State because the secondary for Ohio State ain't been very good. Like, that's what it is. You got Sean Wade. Josh Proctor is good, if not great. Sean Wade was a finalist for the Paycom Jim Thorpe Award, but on the other side, you got to figure it out, right? Because I thought Seven Banks was going to be the truth, and Seven Banks ain't been the truth, all right? You need to figure it out with Marcus Hooker, and you need to figure it out with Latham Ransom, because you want to play that single high coverage, that's going to give you man on the outside. You want to go against Cornell Powell and Amari Rodgers in man coverage, you sign your own death certificate. That's not how I want to live. But if that's the only way you can create pressure, and that's the only way you can cover, it's going to be a long day. Because Pete Werner, Baron Browning, those dudes, Tough Borland, they can't run with those slot dudes, especially Amari. You just can't do it. And that's where you're going to get exploited. Let's see. Got it here. Who's winning the national championship? I picked Alabama in January. I see no reason not to pick Alabama. I've been right about that for 12 months. Why would I choose differently? Come on, man. Like, that's actually a video on this channel. You can go check that out. Let's see what we got in here. Pac-12 just needs to have an undefeated team. The recruits will come after that like hell. Yikes. Where you see Trey Brown going in the NFL? I don't know, dog. He's going to have to show some stuff to get drafted at this point. He's got speed, but Jeff Badette has speed. Jeff Badette had 4.2 speed. Still didn't get drafted. You know, you're going to need more than that. And after us watching Trey Brown get abused and get picked on all this season by Big 12 wideouts, that's a tough sell. Like, I got a harder time selling Trey this year than I did Parnell Motley last year. And you know how I feel about the boys from Tulsa. He's going to have to show some stuff in his draft workouts. Let me see. What else you got in here? Man, you better hope Sam Ehlinger doesn't come back. Like, I love Sam the person. Casey Thompson's a better quarterback. Casey Thompson has shown he's a better quarterback. I've said Casey Thompson ought to have the job. Thompson went into the transfer portal last year and then was talked out of it by Herman, thinking this is going to be the last year you got to sit behind Sam Ehlinger. If Sam comes back, kiss Casey goodbye. And for that matter, perhaps even a Hudson Card. Because you've already seen Cam Rising said, enough of this, I'm leaving. JaQuindon Jackson said, enough of this, I'm leaving. And now you got a guy that you know is better than the dude that you were starting for the other 9 games. Well, for 10 games, started against Colorado. You got to let Casey Thompson and Bijan Robinson run this thing. Because that's the only way you're going to have an opportunity to beat Oklahoma in a Big 12 championship setting. And Oklahoma's won 6 consecutive. What do you want to change there? Let's see. Right now, I got Olave slotted as a fringe first-round pick, but we'll see how he plays against Clemson. That's going to have a lot to say about it. A.J. Terrell got toe up by Jamar Chase in the national championship game. He's still a first-round pick by the Falcons. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. Doc Winston Boogie says, I hope Sam comes back. Casey is scary. Yes, Casey is scary. The way that he was able to run that offense and just 8 of 10, 4 TDs, 1/2 of football. Whew, it's nasty. Are you covering the SWAC in the spring? Probably. Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. Let's see how many games they play. Bryce will be the man next year. Or Jalen taking Bryce. Oh, yeah. Talk about Bryce Young. Do you think Larry Johnson would be a better play caller than Ryan Day against Clemson? No. No, I don't mean it to sound like that, but like Larry Johnson's the defensive line coach. Why would I want Larry Johnson to call the offense? He didn't call the offense against, which game did they need to sit him out? game before Michigan State, right? That was Kevin Wilson. And Kevin Wilson was the OC at Oklahoma the last time that Oklahoma played in a national championship. Kevin Wilson gets the play calling duties before Larry Johnson does. Nah, dog. Like, Larry Johnson's a defensive line coach and a defensive dude. Probably going to be a great head coach when he gets that chance or when he wants to take that chance. But no, Ryan Day's the guy. That's who you want calling plays. Trajan needs to break out. We'll see what Trajan does, especially with Hazelwood being out of this game tonight. I think I got one more question I can answer here. I don't want to answer that question. Do you think there will be a surprise first round draft? There always is. Yes, I think there is going to be one. I think like Jordan Love really getting all that draft day buzz because of how he had worked out at the combine and how he looked even after he led the FBS in interceptions thrown. There's going to be somebody that surprises the hell out of us that vaults into the first round. Might be a defensive player because this has been a really difficult year to nail down good defensive players. Like 3 linebackers come to mind. One of them we talked about earlier in the show, Jeremiah Owusu-Kamara. Another, Mike Rose, I think is going to be coming back for Iowa State, though he's going to be great. Zaven Collins at Tulsa. He's the Nagurski Award winner. Just missed out on the Butkus Award. He's outstanding. You're going to have dudes, right? Like Kerry Vincent opted out of playing for LSU this year. He could vault in there as a safety. We'll see, right? We'll see. All right. If you like the channel, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button on this video because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. I will see y'all in a couple hours. Deuces.